Something is happening in international waters, and most people aren't even aware of it. The U.S. Coast Guard and military units are stopping oil tankers belonging to Venezuela. In December 2025, the Skipper. In January 2026, the Marinera and M. Sofia, 3 tankers, billions of dollars worth of oil. These tankers weren't in American waters. On paper, they weren't violating U.S. laws. They were transporting oil to buyers approved by Venezuela, yet they were stopped. The U.S. Argument: sanctioned companies and regime connections. Is there legal basis? Yes, but that's not the real question. The real question is, what's being done with these tankers? On paper, Venezuela still owns the oil, but who decides what happens to that oil? The Trump administration. And Trump just signed an executive order solidifying this control. Because this is no longer just sanctions enforcement. This is strategic control. Now let's get to the interesting part. Those tankers are being redirected to U.S. ports. The oil is unloaded, refined, sold. The revenue from every dollar goes to accounts controlled by the U.S. government. What does the official statement say? For the benefit of the Venezuelan people and the American people. Who decides what that means? The Trump administration, at its own discretion. But this isn't even the bombshell part of the story. Days after the seizure operations, something else happens. Trump organizes a meeting at the White House. With whom? 17 oil company executives. ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Marathon, Valero, Shell. Big names. Official agenda: investment opportunities in Venezuela. Real agenda: who will control Venezuelan oil? And this is where things get really interesting. Trump gives the executives a number: $100 billion. The investment needed to rebuild Venezuela's collapsed energy infrastructure. The ExxonMobil CEO summarizes the situation. If we look at the commercial structures in Venezuela today, it's not investable. Trump's response is telling. Companies won't invest in Venezuela as it is now. They'll invest in Venezuela as restructured by the U.S., and that restructuring has already begun. Trump makes an announcement. The U.S. will begin refining and selling 30 to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan crude oil. Immediately, the oil goes to American Gulf Coast refineries. It's processed, revenue deposited into U.S. controlled accounts. Venezuela's access to this money? Entirely subject to conditions set by Trump. Energy Secretary Chris Wright's words are crystal clear. We need to have leverage and control over these oil sales so we can bring about the changes that need to happen in Venezuela. A partner doesn't speak like that. A manager does. And it goes further. Venezuela will now purchase only American-made products with oil revenue. Not an incentive, a requirement. When you control the revenue, you control what it's used for. The same day, Trump signs an executive order. This order doesn't authorize the seizures, it protects them. Venezuelan oil revenues, billions of dollars, are in U.S. bank accounts. And now under a framework. One that limits Venezuela's access. Protects the funds from competing claims. Official justification: preventing misuse of funds. Practical result: consolidating control. If Venezuela can't access the money without approval, the U.S. isn't just controlling the oil, it's controlling the entire financial cycle. Venezuela's oil production is collapsing. 3.5 million barrels per day in the 1,990 seconds. Today, barely 800,000 barrels. Refineries breaking down. Equipment failing. Infrastructure decaying. Venezuela needs money to repair this. Where's that money? In American banks. Money from its own oil sales. Is Trump releasing it? No. The longer Venezuela's production stays broken, the stronger the argument for American companies to take over. And Trump is preparing for exactly that. Trump promises executives complete security in Venezuela, not from accidents, from the Venezuelan government itself. The framework being established isn't partnership. It's American companies operating in Venezuela under U.S. protection. Venezuela has no say. The U.S. is increasing oversight of Venezuelan oil operations, shipping routes, port operations, refinery management, loading schedules, export priorities, tanker assignments, all now require American approval. Venezuela owns the infrastructure, but without operational authority, how meaningful is ownership? Symbols don't transport oil. Systems do. Trump says gas prices will drop. He's probably right, because when you control supply, you control price. Tankers are going to Texas and Louisiana. Oil is being turned into gasoline and diesel, sold in the American market. Venezuela isn't receiving these revenues. Venezuela is requesting access to funds from oil sales to repair basic infrastructure. What's the status of these requests? Pending. Not denied. Pending. Pending subject to unwritten conditions. Meanwhile, production is falling, equipment isn't being replaced, the system is decaying. With each passing month, the argument for external management grows stronger. If the resource can't be extracted efficiently, if the government can't access revenue, if infrastructure is controlled from outside, ownership remains theoretical. At the White House meeting, an executive asks about nationalization risk. Venezuela's history of seizing foreign assets. Trump's answer isn't legal assurance. It's structural assurance. There's no risk of Venezuela regaining control, because Venezuela has no control to regain. Venezuelan oil is moving, tankers are loading, refineries are operating. But every step, from extraction to transport, from sale to revenue distribution, goes through systems Venezuela doesn't fully control. Oil flows when American authorities approve. It's sold to buyers American authorities approve. It generates revenue controlled by the Trump administration. Venezuela is sovereign on paper. But without autonomy, what does sovereignty mean? Formalities don't determine where oil goes. Infrastructure does. The White House makes a new announcement. All oil entering or leaving Venezuela will now flow through channels consistent with U.S. law. Not Venezuelan law, U.S. law. Marketing Venezuelan oil for the benefit of the United States, Venezuela, and our allies. Operational reality. American commodity traders are making the sales. Venezuela isn't managing them. Revenues go to U.S. Controlled accounts. There are billions of dollars in the accounts. Generated by Venezuelan oil, belonging to Venezuela on paper. In practice, inaccessible to Venezuela freely. Venezuela can't repair infrastructure, needs financing. Can't access financing, needs approval. Can't get approval unless it meets conditions set by Trump. The loop is closed. Trump's executive order ensures it stays closed. By controlling access to funds, you control the authority over how they're used. American equipment is flowing to Venezuela. Diluent, thinning agents, technical equipment, assessment teams. Did Venezuela request this? No. The U.S. is preparing to manage the system directly. Chevron says, we can increase production by 50% in 18 months. Not with new investment, with optimization. This is phase one. The $100 billion investment comes later. When Trump decides Venezuela is ready. What does ready mean? Compliant. Trump says rebuild, but rebuild means restoration. What's happening here is replacement. Replacement of decision-making authority, replacement of financial control, replacement of operational management. Venezuela holds the flag. The U.S. holds the function. Venezuelan oil, sold through American-controlled channels, transported on American-approved routes, refined in American facilities, deposited into American-controlled accounts. Distributed at American discretion. Venezuela still owns it, but Trump controls everything that makes ownership meaningful. No occupation was declared. No military intervention occurred. Just stopped tankers, an executive order, a system operating through Washington. Trump announces, Venezuela has agreed that the U.S. will immediately begin refining and selling 50 million barrels of Venezuelan crude oil. This will continue indefinitely. The Venezuelan government is debating this, but the infrastructure to implement it is already in place. Tankers are going to American ports. Oil is flowing. Revenue is controlled. The executive order keeps the framework in place. You control the cargo, you control the revenue, you control access to funds. You don't need to invade, you just manage. And management doesn't require permission. It just requires infrastructure. Right now, that infrastructure operates through Washington. The question is, does this end with Venezuela, or can this model be used elsewhere? Time will tell. But one thing is certain. The rules of the geopolitical power game are changing, and most people aren't even aware of it yet.